Daniel Jeremiah, DJ now joining us live. So I'm looking at mock drafts and prospect rankings. So, it's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, a buddy of mine who scouted for the Eagles, John Middlecoff, and I said, give me one guy that can't bust. And he said, well, Brock Bowers dominated in Napa, then went to the SEC and was dominant as a rookie. He's like, I can't see Brock Bowers dominating or failing. But what's interesting about that is you probably can't either, but tight ends and safeties don't get paid in this league. And if you draft him high, you're paying him. So I think years and years ago, a scout told me, a GM told me, Patrick Willis was the cleanest, best player in the draft. He went 11. He goes, but he's linebacker. And the linebackers aren't going to go top 4 or 5. So when I watch this year, I'm like, okay, Brock Bowers, that can't miss. But do you think he goes high? The Chargers need a tight end. The Jets need a tight end. The Giants need a tight end. What do you make with that position and that kid? Because I watched him eat up the SEC as a freshman.
Yeah, look, he's a great player. He's going to be one of those guys where I'm going to have him higher grade-wise than where he's going to go. And you hit on some of it there, Colin, in that if I'm picking up there in the top 10, I want to not only bring in a good player, but I want to maximize the dollars that I have on my salary cap here. So if the receiver market and those guys are fetching, upwards north of $20 million a year for those top receivers, getting up towards $30 million a year, and I take one there in the top 10 and I'm spending $7-8 million on that. That is a huge amount of savings that I'm not only drafting that receiver, I'm freeing up all that other money to go fill other spots on my roster. Whereas the top end tight end market, you're nowhere near that. So you're not getting that same value, that same savings. And then you add to that every year, we see guys like Sam Laporta who goes in the second round and was awesome last year. Obviously, Kelsey's a great example. He was not a first round pick. Kittle was a fifth round pick. You can find good players outside of the premium picks in the draft at that position. And then the Kyle Pitts thing. Kyle Pitts is as high a grade as I've ever given a tight end. But it's a situation-dependent position where they don't have much quarterback play there, and we haven't seen Kyle Pitts do anything that we thought he would do.
Yeah. Quarterbacks, you have Caleb 1, you have Drake Maye 2, and here's my concern. Unless you have remarkable physical traits, Josh Allen, Stafford and Mahomes may be the best arm talents I've ever seen. Lamar Jackson, people just don't move like that at quarterback. If you have that, you can be a little rough around the edges. I'll roll the dice and try to refine you. But Drake Maye's big. He's 6'4", 220, but it's not remarkably big. And what concerns me is if you're not otherworldly unique, if you don't have then I want production and consistency. I don't know what I get. Even in his pro day, aren't you a little worried that stuff that should be automatic for him a lot of times isn't?
Well, I would say, first of all, let's start with the pro day. He threw the ball a lot more than anybody else did at the pro day. I think it was almost close to 80 throws, the majority of which were really good. He had a couple that got away from him. I'm not going to overreact on that side of it. I would say the other side of that argument, when you talk about, Josh Allen, okay, he's a really good athlete. He's not as good an athlete as Josh Allen. He has a really strong arm. It's not as strong as Josh Allen. I'll put Josh Allen to the side, and I'll give you one with Jordan Love there, Colin. Jordan Love, the year before his final year in college, we were talking about him like he's a top 5 pick. Then the supporting cast disappears. His production goes way down. It didn't change the ability that he had. The surroundings changed. And obviously he had the luxury of sitting and waiting for his opportunity there in Green Bay. But I think, from a skill set standpoint, coming out of college, I would have Drake Maye as a more talented player than Jordan Love. And we've seen Jordan Love land in the right position. I think Jordan Love's going to be a really good player for a long time.
Yeah. So your mock draft, you do have Minnesota moving up for J.J. McCarthy. If you think it's going to work, do you think it's going to work? Because as I've said earlier on the show, it's a furnished apartment. They have everything. Just put some waters and Diet Cokes in the fridge. Left tackle, receiver. They're ready. That's a move-in turnkey property. Or do you think it's going to work because JJ's otherworldly? Because I watched Michigan a lot the last couple years, and I thought he was good. I never thought he was a top 5 player. What do you make if Minnesota makes that move? Is your take on McCarthy? He's great, or it'll just work at Michigan and Minnesota because it's set up to work?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's my 20th player. So when you look at the other three guys, I have the other three in the top 6 in terms of how I graded them, and he's the 20th. So there's a separation gap there in terms of the talent. And, we've always used the analogy, Bucky and I, we always talk about, are you a truck or are you a trailer? There's very few trucks that can pull the team behind them and make everyone better. Most of these guys are trailers. They're going to be dependent on their situation, and then they can be a part of the winning. They're not going to be the reason why you're winning. And I think when you have the setup they have in Minnesota, it's the most quarterback friendly destination that I can remember for a young quarterback to potentially walk into, to the point where, look, I'm still not giving up on Sam Darnold. I'm excited to see what he looks like, with all that support and setup they have there in Minnesota. But with JJ, he's got all the ingredients, Colin. He just doesn't have the same sample size, and the offense didn't run through him like it ran through these other top quarterbacks. So, the analogy, and you're the king of analogies. Grade this one. Give me an A to F on this one. I've said that JJ has the same ingredients, but while these other quarterbacks have baked a wedding cake, he's put a cupcake out there. We just haven't had a chance to see quite the same sample size. Can you give me a grade on that one?
Let's let it bake. I'll give you a B, maybe a B plus.
Okay, I'll take it.
Finally,
I'll take it.
Is there?
C's get degrees, Colin.
Yes. Two questions left. Number one, is there a player that you could see dropping either fit, need, or questions? Maybe it's Penix, but are we going to have an Aaron Rodgers situation here where you're like, that player's I think better than that? Is there any player you think could drop? You're hearing things.
Well, I mean, I think Penix is the wild card there, where the Raiders make sense when you look at where they are. I make the case if he walked into the Raiders building tomorrow and they went out and threw on the field with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, it would not be close in terms of the talent gap there. So that one makes sense. But if it's not the Raiders, I just don't know exactly where to fit him in. I don't think he's in the Broncos' plans. That's not what I've heard. That's not what the expectation is around the league. It doesn't sound like that's a Vikings move if they stay there. So if he gets beyond the Raiders, now you start getting into, okay, maybe this guy goes in the second round. Maybe he doesn't go in the first round. So I think there's more of a range with him. Bo Nix is somewhat similar in that nobody knows exactly where to peg him. Denver gets mentioned a little bit with him, but he's another one who's, flip a coin. Is he going to go in 1 or is he going to go in 2?
So this is a really good receiver class. I'm a Marvin Harrison fan. His dad was, if not peculiar, different. He was different. I mean, I've heard stories where he would do practice, not shower, and just go. He didn't hang around with teammates. So sometimes son, dad, a lot of similarities personality-wise. I think he's remarkable. I put him in the Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson. I just think he is ready to be great. I always felt with Jamar Chase, I was watching a pro football player. He just played on Saturdays. Would you pass on Harrison if he was available? I mean, do you have him as the number 1 receiver?
Yeah, he's my number 2 player. Him and Caleb are similar to me in that I think that they've been around for so long and they've been on the scene for so long. It happens all the time. They get nitpicked, and you find out everybody's trying to find what's wrong with them. And with Marvin, it's, he's not going through the process like everybody else has. Well, go look at the GPS numbers as the teams have. This dude has got plenty of speed. If that's all you're going to do in the spring is train for a 40, just go look at his in-game speed numbers. They're outstanding. And then we've seen all the production. I just think you get to the point where you overthink this thing. These names have been around for a long time. For me, it's been Caleb 1, it's been Marvin Harrison 2, and it's been that way from start to finish. It's
an offensive league. Andy Reid has rebuilt his O-line twice and his receiving core once or twice, and yet ends up in Super Bowls every time. Some of it's obviously Mahomes, but I do trust a McVay or an Andy Reid to rebuild offensive parts. Kyle Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, more than a defensive coach. Now, the Bills that struggled to rebuild their O-line for years in run game, they don't have any receivers. Stefon Diggs to Houston. Great obviously for Houston. It's perfect. Rookie quarterback contract. Do you worry that Buffalo, as Herbert will be healthy, Trevor Lawrence is back, Burrow is back. Aaron Rodgers is back. They don't have a 1 or a 2 receiver. Are you concerned at all, Stefon Diggs out in Buffalo?
Oh, I'm curious to see how they're going to go about doing it. Now, I will say in this draft and probably every draft going forward, there's a zillion receivers. So they can get guys. They can get guys at the bottom of the first round where they're picking. They can get guys in the middle rounds that'll come in there with Josh Allen. And, I think they're going to be okay. I think Josh Allen is a truck. When we were just talking about trucks and trailers, I think he'll make others better. And this is just the reality of what the league is right now. When you pay these guys, you saw it with Mahomes, and they had to make a decision on Tyreek Hill, and he goes away. You saw it this year with the Chargers. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they're gone. They're going to have to rely on younger players and expect your young stud quarterback who you've paid to elevate those guys. And I think the same thing is true there in Buffalo. And Diggs is a he's a stud, but his play has tailed off a little bit.
Yeah.
And when you get to 30 and you're paying that much money at that position, when you already have the quarterback paid, I almost think it's looked at as a luxury.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't have to have a number 1 receiver to hoist a trophy. That much is absolutely true. You need weapons. You need a good O-line, a good coach, a capable quarterback. DJ, as always, great seeing you, bud. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.